What is going on, everybody? My name is Tatro here with ADSR, and we're partnering with Serato to show off the music making process in Serato Studio. I'm making beats in a couple different genres in Serato Studio, and for this video, we're going to be working on a typical hip-hop beat. Now, I know that's a pretty broad range genre, so bear with me, but let's dig in and make a typical hip-hop beat in Serato Studio. If you want to follow along with this tutorial, or you just like the workflow that you see in Serato Studio, use the link in the description and you can get a free version of Serato Studio to work with today. So let's get into it. As we boot up Serato Studio here, it offers us to do a blank slate with a new beat or a new remix. Then we've also got some templates. And I figure since we are doing a hip hop beat today, let's select the hip hop rap template and see what we come up with. Now, basically what it's set us up with here is an old school drum kit that we can play right here on our computer keyboard, or we can play on a MIDI keyboard. And that's a good way to start. This is pretty much the drum selection I would have made anyway. And it also sets us at a tempo of 95. So let's turn on the metronome, this button right here. Click play and listen to that tempo. I think that's a perfect tempo for us to start off with a typical hip hop beat. Now we could, of course, finger drum on a MIDI controller, or we could play it in on our keys here. We could also draw on the grid here, add in different notes. Or we could use this other cool feature called Make Drums, which at the top of every drum kit that's loaded as a deck, you can actually select a genre and it will generate a drum pattern for you that is typical to that genre. So we're doing hip hop and rap anyway. Let's go ahead and push that button and see what it came up with. I had something a little more upbeat in mind. So let's hit that button again and generate something new. That's a really cool starting point, actually, and I think I might go with that. One thing I might change about it, though, is this wood hit here. I might instead make it an open hi-hat. Cool. And let's add our own flavor again by pushing this plus button, which actually doubles the loop for us. So now we have a 2-bar loop instead of a 1-bar loop. Here's bar 1, and now we're in bar 2. Let's add in an extra kick here. Let's get rid of the open hi-hat and maybe swap it back for the wood hit and continue on with a little more closed hi-hat at the end there. Let's play through this 2 bars again. And it's all very kind of steady. There's no swing to it at all. But if we start to crank up this swing knob, I'm playing with it around 60%, and I really like that feel. Awesome. So we got up and running right away with a drum groove using that Make Drums feature. So I'm excited to keep on going and add another layer to our beat here. I think the next layer we could probably add is a bass line. So I'm going to go to Instruments down here, and let's find an easy bass to work with here. This Flex Moger bass. Let's get it in there, click and drag. And our instruments are automatically in key, or in the key that the project is set to. And like the drums, we can play them on our keyboard. We can play them on our MIDI keyboard. And if we are playing on our regular keyboard here, we can use Z and X to change octave. So Z to go down. That's more the range we want to be in, but also know that X goes up. Now, like I said, we're playing in key, which is set at our project at the top, but we can also turn that off and play chromatically. That also adapts to our MIDI keyboard. Notice that these 2 notes are the same because E natural is not actually in the key of C minor. So it's automatically adjusting it to play E flat. Turn play in key mode off. We get all the chromatic notes. Let's keep it in key mode now. As you might have heard, there's a little bit of glide on this bass, meaning that when I play between notes, it actually glides between them, which if you want to adjust that, we can bring that down. I don't think it'll be a problem because I have a shorter staccato version of a bass line, I think, in my head. And to record in these musical ideas, all we have to do is hit the record button and it will go ahead and count us in with 4 beats. So we won't start recording right away. We have a little time to prepare. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm not like a rhythm robot here, so I might have played that a little off. However, quantization is turned on. So it's automatically quantizing my notes to the grid. I might want to match this bass line up with the same swing as the drums though, if I want it to have the same feel. Each of these instruments, I can adjust their volume in the mix. And I can also adjust their EQ right here, right on the track. Of course, it's bass, so we want to keep those lows. Well, maybe we want to boost them a little bit. I think they're kind of just fine where they are. And maybe I want to make our instruments, including our bass line, kind of duck or bounce underneath our kick drum. In that case, we're going to have to turn on the effects tab here. And now we get access to effects on our individual decks. Usually some of these instruments have effects built into them already, like this light sizzle crusher, which if I turn it on and crank the knob, we'll hear the effect. It's like a bit crushing effect. Let me turn that off. Just try this flanger. It's not really my style. Let me go ahead and swap one of these though. We can add effects to the different decks by going to effects in the library and digging through the crates and finding which type of effect we specifically want. But also on these little effects slots here, I can click a drop down menu and select them from here. So we're going to select sidechain, and let's select a soft sidechain, which is going to have our bass line ducking under our kick pattern. If I crank this knob up, I'm going to keep it gentle on this bass line though, so our bass still cuts through. Since we've got a steady drum groove going, I don't really need to have the metronome on anymore. So I turn that off. And this is a solid first pattern, and I want to keep building on this, but I want to keep this drum and bass pattern on its own as well. And this is where scenes come into play. So scenes are viewable right below our deck here. You'll see we've got a bunch of empty slots that it's saying copy, because if I click on the intro scene that it's created for us, I can copy it onto a new scene here. And now we have scene 2, which is currently identical to the intro scene, which if I click on intro, it'll start playing the intro right after the previous scene is done loading. You see that little time go by, and then we're on to the next scene. But now we can add a layer onto scene 2 and preserve the intro, which is just drum and bass. Let's add some synth chords on top of this. I'm going to go to instruments, piano and keys. And, you know, it is a hip hop beat. I would be remiss if I did not use this synth entitled Atlanta Synth. Again, we are still in key. But I want these to be chords. So I could play in chords. Or I could turn on the auto chord feature, which makes things a lot easier. And we can add more notes to our chord, making them even more complex than a basic triad. So all we have to do is play single notes, and we're getting these very full chords. I do like that sound of having 4 notes there. Now, what chords go well with that bass line? We can revisit the bass line and take a look at the MIDI for it. And we can see we're playing a lot of C. And when we're playing a little bit of, you know, fills there at the end, we'll call them. So I feel like as long as I'm anchored back on C with our chord instrument, we're pretty good. Let's just try to improvise over the top. I like that. Just repeat that. And here we'll... Very simple. So we're basically just gonna bounce between C and G, or 1 and 5 on the computer keyboard. And then at the end, we're going to play F or 4. Now what I'm noticing is what I'm playing is actually a longer phrase than 2 bars. It's actually 4 bars. So I'm going to go ahead and double this, and I don't need to go back and play the bass line again for another 2 bars or play the drums again for another 2 bars because it's automatically duplicated them across 4 bars. So let's go ahead and record that. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to turn record off so I don't accidentally overdub. This is pretty loud though. Awesome. And I'm going to want to add that same sidechain that I added to the previous instrument, the bass. So let's go ahead and drop down menu, add our soft sidechain. Purple means it's turned on. Great. Let's crank it up. So I like that scene, and the same thing that we did for the intro, I actually want to copy this new scene over to a third scene so we can add another layer. And one of the things I think about when I think about hip hop beats and production is chopping up some samples. So if we go down to our library and we select audio samples, we actually have a collection of samples. We can see what key they're all in. We can preview what they sound like. You can see the artist that they're from, and you can see kind of in the comment section what type of vibe they're going to have, I guess you could say. Now, it would be great to find a sort of acoustic sample that blends in with our acoustic drums. We've got some synths here, but let's add something that goes with it. This guitar sample sounds pretty great. It's in A minor and it's at a different tempo, but if we drop this into our decks here, it will automatically adjust the key of the sample for us as well as the timing. So let's go ahead and try that the same way we're playing all our other instruments. It's actually already found some spots in the sample that are worth playing. Cool. I'm just going to play the beat. So I really like that first sample. I'm going to favorite it. The reason for that is I want to find some other interesting places that can be chopped. And by pressing find sample, it will, look for other places for us. I really like that, number 4. And what you'll notice is the sections that I'm favoriting, they're not getting rechopped. They're not losing their spot. So I'm keeping the ones I like. Ooh, and I really like that spot. And instead of doing something random, I'm actually just going to move that marker myself for number 6 here. And I think there we have a pattern. Couple things we got to adjust though. When I press that first key, works with our MIDI controller as well. Notice as soon as I lift off, it ends. I want to turn the release up, which will actually let it kind of fade out, taper off. I can turn it up even more. That'll help things blend a bit better. Let's do that for each of these samples that I like. Let me favorite that so I don't forget it. Great. We also have the power to reverse these samples, key shift them individually, change the tempo of them. I'm not going to mess with any of that because I think Serato Studio has done most of the work. Let's try to play along here. All right, so I'm really happy with those chops. Now let's go ahead and record it over our drum beat here. We get the 4 beat count in, and let's play. Awesome. Let's sidechain this sample while we're here. Not too much though. And now we've got three basic scenes, right? We've got our intro, just bass and drums. Scene 2, which adds the synth. Scene 3, which brings in that new sample, which actually really adds a lot to the track, which I think is great. Let's add one more effect to that sample while we're here. Let's add a reverb to it. A light tail reverb. Great. I'm going to make a duplicate of this scene. And what I'd like to do for this duplicated scene here is completely take out the drums. So I'm going to go to drums and I'm going to just clear the pattern. So now we have a version of this with no drums at all. As opposed to scene 3 that's got drums. Here it comes. And now for our final scene, I want to duplicate scene 3 because it definitely has the most going on in it, right? So I'll click scene 3, copy it over here, and now we've got scene 5. And let's switch up the drums completely for this new scene. And let's, again, use the make drums function. Already, I like how we've switched to the proper snare. Let's remember to bring up the swing, just like we've been doing. And I think there's an opportunity to even throw in some open hi-hats here. Let's do that again for bar 3. And for bar 4, I want to add a little more with the snare hits. You notice that by clicking on an individual bar, we can loop that specific bar if we're working on it. And I've created a pattern here that matches what the synth does. Great. I'm stoked with this beat so far. I think we can start to demonstrate how to arrange a beat like this. So we can go to our song view now. It's starting with our intro. And I actually don't like starting like that. So I'm gonna just click on that intro bar and hit delete. I'd actually like to start with this, but before we throw that into our arrangement, I have one more idea. Let's copy this scene 4 here onto scene 6. And you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to add a filter effect to our guitar sample. Yeah, let's record that. We record it the same way we record notes. So I'm starting on 0 here. I'm going to hit record. I'm going to just slowly turn up that knob. And it's automatically recorded that. But if we go to other scenes like scene 4, make sure we turn our filter back to its default state at 0. And now in all of our other scenes, it will be normal filter, except on scene 6, we'll get that effect. One more thing I want to add to this scene, since it is going to kind of be our intro, and I just thought of this, is what if we add one little hit on the drums in bar 4. So let's open up the drums. So we have beats 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to do a clap and a snare and a kick right on that. And then our beat will come in. Okay. These scenes are kind of messy. Let's rename them a bit. And now we can start to build this up for real. So let's start with our actual intro here. And then let's drop right into a bass and drums groove, followed by the bass drums and the synth. Let's go to a little bit of that bridge section. We'll go back to kind of a more basic pattern. We'll go to a full groove, bridge, followed by full groove 2. And suddenly we've got this arrangement. Actually, you know what I just realized? Let's take the bass out of that little intro 1 section. We'll go right here to our bass instrument, click clear. Let's try that again. I like this better. There we go. We can view our master by clicking master. We've got master effects here, so we could add brightness if we wanted to. I don't think this track necessarily needs brightness, but a good master compressor won't hurt anybody. And we can see in real time how these effects are affecting the sound. That was a kind of short verse. We could have expanded that. And now we're grooving. And say you really like this track, you wanted to get a rapper or a singer over it, you could send them this track, get them to do a top line, send it back to you, and you can add their audio right in here as a second channel. But it's as simple as that, making a hip hop beat in Serato Studio. So if you did enjoy this workflow and this process, make sure you grab that free version of Serato Studio at the link in the description. And stay tuned for more videos where we're working in a couple of other genres, and we're also covering some music making topics in Serato Studio. My name is Tetro for ADSR. Have a good one.